So I did a post this week about why am I posting? And it's led me to a thought process. And why I'm making this video is that sometimes when a creative thought comes up, I find myself sometimes to be more authentic and less curated when I speak to it. Because when I write about it, I'll go and do all this research and try to get some other thinker to sanction the thoughts that are going on in my head. And I'm not going to do that. So can we just celebrate that as a starting point? Second, nobody may watch this, and that's okay too. But here's so this is a capture really of a thought. It's a chance for me to express an idea without needing external validation or sanctioning of my thought. And I'm going to try to not cram in too many ideas because my little ADD brain goes bing, 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 bing. So I'm going to try to keep it centralized. But there are two things that I'm weaving together, and I'll go backwards. I've outgrown something. And what I've outgrown is trying to change people. And I'm not sure what, if it's just age, if it's watching high conflict couples in my office who bring their partner in and are completely unreflective and unwilling to look at their relationship as an interactive system, and instead spend the couples therapy trying to scold, cajole, shame, blame, or coerce their partner into being a human that will not bring up so much discomfort in them. Or if it's confronting my own capacity to let other humans have their own mind. I've been very interested, and I am signed up for a training through the Anna Freud Center on mentalization-based therapy. I think through STAIR, we do so much work on our own boundaries as a therapist, meaning a containing boundary, a little spaceship or spacesuit or bubble around us, that we have our own thoughts and feelings in here. And we do not need to impose our thoughts and feelings on our client. Also, when you're in your own little spacesuit, you can soothe yourself. So your client might say something that you don't agree with or that irritates you. You need to have this capacity because clients act stuff out, and your job is to use your psyche as a part of the change process. And if you're acting stuff out or taking personally stuff your clients say, you can't use your psyche as part of the change in the therapeutic space. Clients get to act stuff out with you. They get to be pissed off at you. They get to poke at you. They get to say you suck at your job. They get to say, why do you like my partner more than me? Why are you taking, they get to do all that stuff. But if you as a therapist don't have this differentiated self or this capacity to mentalize, meaning I have a mind and you have a mind, then you're not actually going to serve the client very well. Where's all this heading? Well, I have a piece that I have written and I'll post it soon, but it got me thinking about influence, right? We've got these social media platforms, but we've been engaging in influence long before social media came around. Think about proselytizing in religion. That was about influence, right? And I also was thinking the other day, what is the influence that psychology has had? I said something on LinkedIn to a colleague the other day. I said, everyone talks about therapy as this agnostic entrant into the field of human relating, but we actually have changed how humans relate. And I started doing research. You've read the book Bowling Alone, or there's some research that suggests that maybe we're not in a loneliness epidemic. Loneliness has always been a problem, and the only group that it seems to have increased for are young people. And since the 1980s, since we started measuring longitudinally, loneliness for older people has gone down. Now, I've got to go do some more digging into the research because research is tricky and you got to look at how the studies were done. I think we'll get better research because we're going to start measuring this more. But that's a state of influence. To say it's an epidemic, I'm like, what's that for? And when I was commenting about therapists, they said, you know, I have anecdotal research from listening on the sidewalk for 12 years. And the number one thing that people say to me when I invite them to come sit down is, I already have a therapist that I talk to. I thought, are we less vulnerable because people are saving the things that trouble them, and they're saving their reflective capacities about life for a therapist's office? Because like me, I was scared to make this video and just tell you what I thought, because they don't want to be exposed. It feels exposing to say, hey, I'm struggling with this thing, right? Moreover, therapy has influenced us by almost creating, now that therapy and therapists are more and more on social media, not dissimilar. I grew up in the church, right? Not dissimilar to how the church was. You use those 10 commandments, and then we're surveilling your behavior vis-a-vis the 10 commandments. But now we're using psychological theory, good communication skills, empathy skills, listening skills, and surveilling our behavior based on all that stuff. I'm like, interesting. Undergrad, I was a political science major, and I wish I could quote sources, but one of the things that we talked about was the role of the church in making it cheaper to govern people. People were cheaper to govern if they believed in this sort of 10 commandments, self-surveillance model, because they police themselves. And are we doing that again with psychotherapy, especially forms that sort of present itself like these are the correct behaviors, right? And more I'm noticing something that people don't have the capacity for. I think sometimes I didn't. And I sometimes feel like social media makes it worse because it sort of incites us to argue and disagree. And my mind is the right view. And, Freudians would say that's annihilation anxiety. I forget who came up with the negative capability. Was it Keats? All of this to say mentalization is a much like negative capability. When we spend a lot of time needing to influence one another, is that coming from a place of systems needing to make people cheaper to govern and cheaper to police because now they're self-surveilling? And two, when people are saving all of their insight, all of their philosophical thinking for a therapist's office and not bringing that out into the public sphere, right? Does that make us lonelier? I mean, I actually wonder, I'm like, how did psychotherapy contribute to the loneliness problem if there is one? Right? Some folks say, well, there isn't a loneliness epidemic, but we may have started to say we want something different in our connection. And maybe what we want to be different in our connection is a little bit more insightful, a little bit deeper, a little bit less competitive and performative connection, but real heartfelt connection. But if we're all self-policing or self-surveilling or self-governing, our connection is going to be much more performative, right? I hope these good ideas are connecting because I'm just off the cuff. My deepest wish, and I remember, there's a YouTube video of me saying this out there somewhere from years ago. I never wanted psychotherapy to make us into American cheese. For those of you not in America, there's this disgusting cheese that is like plastic, and they wrap each slice in this cellophane, and they're perfectly square, perfectly colored, doesn't stink, melts great on cheeseburgers, but it's boring. It's every uniform. And what I always hoped that psychotherapy would be was to make people feel safe enough and healed enough, not perfectly healed, healed enough to be their weird, awesome self, to be weird and creative and odd. I wanted them to be an oddball. And I wanted to have the capacity in myself after going to therapy to let someone be an oddball, to let someone be grumpy, or to let someone be bombastic and loud. But it seems like, one, we haven't asked the question, how has psychotherapy itself contributed to the loneliness? If we're saving our intimacies, our philosophies, and our depth for a therapist's office, or two, if therapy has turned us into little self-surveillance and influencing machines because we believe that the world should all subscribe to the 10 commandments of psychotherapy. And if you don't, you're harming me because I don't have any mentalization, negative capability, or differentiation capacities to let you be who you are and bear it. Instead, I have to influence you to be something that you are not. I think that's pretty close to what I wanted to say. I always hoped that therapy would build our capacity to let each human relate to one another in their bizarreness, in their creativity, in their emergence, right? And it seems to me like we're just shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. I thought, when we became a secular society that there'd be more space, but we've just come up with the new list of 10 commandments. And I do think, I was on this listserv the other day, and it was a bunch of psychoanalysts, and they were arguing about an idea, and none of them had the capacity to hear one another. They were getting offended and acting out, and I'm like, wait, you guys are supposed to be like some of the deepest therapists on the planet, and you can't have this conversation. And I felt so lonely. And I went, oh, what if loneliness is really about all the ways that we're told who we are isn't okay? And boy, do we pump that stuff out in our culture in a lot of ways. We pump it out based on identities. Sometimes we say you can only be known as your identity. I'm just a white middle-aged woman and that's all I am, right? Or sometimes we pump it out based on how much money you make, or how productive you are, or how attractive you are, what color your lipstick is, right? Or whether you're kind. I've given talks for some of these kindness things, and I'm starting to realize I really sometimes I was sitting at the sports bar on the weekend, and it was a bunch of old guys in there drinking beers, and we were watching a soccer match, and I was there by myself, and I was just watching. I just kind of loved that a couple of these old guys were real grumpy. I'm like, good for you. I'm sure you have something to be grumpy about. Again, I do think it's helpful to look at the schemas that are shaping our behavior so that we're not miserable humans, but I don't want us to go to therapy to learn to behave. I don't want us to go to therapy to become more palatable for some other human. I want us to go to therapy to free us up to be as weird as we want to be and be safe and loved in the process. And I'd like therapy to start looking at the influence that it has and really be curious. How have we changed the culture? There is a book that I'm going to visit again because I read it all the time. Look at it. It's so dog-eared and underlining, but this book still is one of my favorites, Constructing the Self, Constructing America, A Cultural History of Psychotherapy in America. We need book number 2 now that tech and AI are taking over the connection space. But I love that AI is forcing us to have a conversation about human connection on real terms. Not the bullshit kind where we're all learning to listen well and be kind and all that stuff, but to really go, oh, what are we actually wanting? We're tired of influencing each other to be something other than we are. We want to grow the capacity to be in relationship with our weirdness. I hope this makes sense. Anyway, I'll use AI to summarize this so that you can read the summary. I did take out my Invisalign so I didn't have a lisp while I was talking. See, I'm a little vain. And maybe I'm just channeling David Bowie.